Hey everyone. So Johnny Chainsaw and I made our first podcast, and we found this app called Anchor. It was really easy. Once we found it, it really brought things together. So you can record and edit your podcast right from your phone or from your computer. You can hear it on Spotify, Apple, a bunch of other places. It really is kind of everything that you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Good morning, good evening, and good night, Galaxy. I'm your host, Johnny Chainsaw, joined by my co-host, AZPotato68. Today's a special episode. It's the first in our new series, a roundtable discussion. For today's topic, we're going to be talking about resources rated. We're joined today by two members from Server 22 and one member from Server 34. So Potato, are you excited about today's episode?
Yeah, I really am excited to hear from other players across more than one server about their experience and sharing knowledge about what it takes to be good at raiding and some tips and tricks, and not just hear from me and you talking about what we do, but really share some information from people who are well respected for their ability and accomplishments raiding. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and so definitely to start this off on the topic of well-respected, we have one of the more well-respected players on our server, which is server 22, and that's BigSteph. BigSteph is in the Alliance NGNS on server 22. He's level 40. BigSteph, it's a pleasure to have you on this podcast. I just want to know what made you want to do this podcast.
I don't know. Just wanted to be part of the community. It seemed like the thing to do.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And then next up we have CRABULON. He's a level 32 from server 22. He's also the alliance leader currently of the alliance CAS. So CRABULON, it's great to have you on the podcast. I know you have a pretty long-standing relationship with Potato. You want to just talk a little bit about that and what made you want to do the podcast?
Potato and I randomly found each other in the galaxy. I was watching him defend a base for the alliance he was in at the time. His alliance leader, who had suddenly in one afternoon made the entire galaxy hate him, and here was poor little Potato trying to defend his best. And I messaged him. I was in SH at the time. And I said, hey, do you want to get out of this mess and come join us? And he was in the alliance in about 5 minutes. He said, thank you very much for getting me out of that. And I think it was Maki or Maku, wasn't it, Potato?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so we were in SH for quite a while together, and eventually ended up in the original CAS with the single Z, and we drifted apart with our own styles of playing, and CAS eventually with the extra Z became created, and here we are now. So Potato sent me the invite, and as a longtime friend, I was a little trepidatious about doing this, but happy to be here.
Awesome, CRABULON. Well, we appreciate you being here. And now for our final guest, we have Wraith. He's from the Alliance MRFN. He's on server 34. He is currently a level 30. But the special part about Wraith is, which I think a lot of members out there listening to this podcast right now are going to say, wow, he was able to reach 1 billion in resources rated by level 19. And if anybody out there has ever tried to do any raiding with their envoys, they know how taxing that can be. So, Wraith, it's great to have you on the podcast. I just like to know what made you want to do this podcast, and are you just a big Star Trek fan? What drew you into this game?
Thanks. Great to be here. I don't know. I figured it'd be nice to talk to other people about, their gaming and these different servers and all that. Give my input because, especially at level 19, it's it's a little hard if there's no information out there to get unless you got a good alliance that tells you how things work and all that. But glad to be here.
Awesome. Potato, you got anything more to add before we start jumping into the talking points?
No, I'm. This is a great group to have on, right? Really respected people with a lot of experience rating, and I think they're going to have a lot to share. So let's get started.
Yeah. So for the first talking point, I definitely want to talk about, for all the new members out there in the galaxy listening to this podcast, is rating at lower levels. And Wraith, you kind of touched base on that a little bit, but do you want to just talk, what was your experience like, say, from level 15 to level 19? How are you able to get those type of resources rated numbers?
See, from level 15 through 18, I really didn't know much about doing anything. I was a dry hitter. My power destroy numbers were pretty high because that's all I did. I was kind of like Johnny Chainsaw. I didn't know what row was or anything like that. Then I got invited to Men Are From Mars, and I met Crash'em, and that's when I seen how, because he was a big raider, like raiding bases, and just learned everything I know from that. Is I actually learned from him. I started when I went to their, basically at level 19. That's when I started raiding. And all my resources, 1.2 billion resources rated, was from level 19 alone. Wow. I started raiding from the hive because that's what they would go. They'd crack a base and then we go raid it, and then I just took off from there. And then I finally got out of the hive and started raiding bases by myself.
So, CRABULON, I know as an alliance leader, you deal with more or less teaching and trying to share your experience with other players. What do you normally tell your players when it comes to base cracking and base raiding?
There's not so much a matter of telling or instructing. Both CAS alliances have always been really open about sharing bases and particularly helping use those resources to lift up the lower level players so they can get the resources to build up. So there's always teaching going on with people that are up and coming. But it's really a collective brotherhood, sisterhood of helping each other out, and not so much telling anyone this or that, but just looking to which individual person might need a suggestion here or there.
Yeah, so definitely when you're moving up in levels, a lot changes. Now, Potato, as a level 41, you've been through all the levels till that point. Where have you seen a big shift in the dynamic of raiding while moving up in levels? Has your gameplay changed a lot?
Definitely. So I guess I'd start with everything I learned about raiding. I learned from Crab, by the way. So I got to give him credit for that, right? Early on, and I was like level 15 or level 17 when I joined up with the alliance he was in, and raiding was a little bit different. The dynamics were slightly different, but the way that I learned was, well, go out and raid. Right. I mean, you don't learn about it till you go try it and figure out what your ships can do, and learn what you can unload with a fortunate or with an envoy and how long it takes. But as you progress through the game, it definitely changes the types of bases you're hitting, the resources that you're looking for, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And then the ships you have access to help you crack a base. Right. So when the best thing you've got in your arsenal is a Bacchus, you're not going to go after a base that's got 1 billion resources typically. Right. I mean, you're just not going to be able to get through it. But I would say, kind of to lower level players, when you're trying to get good at raiding and understand the dynamics of it, is don't let your eyes pop out of your head when you see a base with 100 million in resources. It's going to be out of your league without help. Go after the ones that are in your range. They're smaller, and when you're at a lower level, you're not going to be one-shotting bases. So you got to plan for it, and you got to learn what your ships can do, and you got to just go do it a lot, and all of a sudden you find out you're getting pretty good.
Yeah, and definitely you're going to start to see a lot of those big monster stations. Now, BigSteph, you're a level 40. You have some pretty strong ships. If you just want to kind of give the Galaxy or those out there not on server 22 listening, want to just talk a little bit about the size of your ships and what has the size of ships, what kind of dynamic has that been able to bring to the server for you? I know you do a lot of solo raiding, but you also do a lot of team raiding. You want to just talk about what it takes to crack one of those real big high level bases?
Well, lucky for me, I have Jelly at 3.6 million and a nice Auger at 2.7 million. So it's a nice 1-2 punch for opening up the bigger bases. Certainly you got to plan for the ships to strip off with crew loadout, and that makes a world of difference. But if I can raid it in 20, 30 minutes, I'm going to solo it. If it's more than that, I'm going to share it with the team. And that's kind of my standing with how to share with the team or when not to invite them.
So, BigSteph, I see you raiding a lot with player one, Philip the First on our server. Now, you guys like buddies when it comes to raiding, or is it just happens to be that you guys are on at the same time?
We're on the same time zone pretty much for the most part. And yeah, we are pretty big buddies raiding. So, it's certainly easier when you have two big players stripping the bigger bases. So we share them nonstop.
So now, Potato, me and you have done a little bit of raiding before in the past together. I know you have Jelly and an Enterprise. Do you like to just use the Jelly while cracking those big bases, or do you do the quick 1-2 punch as fast as you can with those two big ships?
No, it depends on the size of the base, right? If I can get through it in one shot with the Jelly, that's what I use. But really, when you're raiding a base and you go to crack it and you hit it with one ship and don't get all the way through it, if you wait till that thing repairs or take the time, in the meantime, that base's shields are regenerating. So you keep taking, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and it takes you a lot longer to get there. So you definitely want to keep up the attack after attack after attack until the base cracks, because you want to stay ahead of those shields. So using just one ship, if you can get the timing down right, you can do it. But I really prefer to go with 2 or 3 or even 4 ships, depending on how strong the base is and what I've got available, to make sure I keep those shields down as I'm trying to chew through their ships and their base defenses.
Yeah. So I know everybody kind of has their own personal approach when it comes to finding targets. Wraith, being a level 30 and CRABULON, I'm also going to ask you this question too after Wraith answers is, what are you guys looking for? Are you looking for those stations within your level that have ships home, or are you only looking for stations that don't have any ships home? Because I'm guessing you guys both run Sally's right now. Are you having any trouble finding stations that are able to be cracked? And Wraith, I'll have you start with this question.
Yes, I have a Saladin myself, right at level 30. I find it's like 50-50 if all the ships are gone or all the ships are home. Especially nowadays, everyone's inside. It seems like more people are likely to be online. But I do generally go for the ones that doesn't have any ships in, and then maybe I can get in there real quick before they even get an alert. I'm already halfway through the reserves, but at least I got something out of it. But we've got ships in with the Saladin, especially at level 30, if it's a higher level, it's going to take a couple deaths.
Now, are you using lat to speed up your ships, or are you just burning through your when it comes to that?
I use both. Just depends if I feel they're home or if I'm in a hive. If I'm in a hive, I definitely want to get in there, as quick as possible before someone realizes what I'm doing. So I use
Now,
both.
CRABULON, as a level 32, are you working with the rest of your alliance to crack mid-sized bases, or are you pretty much soloing them when you can find them?
I would say most of the time we work as a team, especially whenever possible. I do personally. I look for all ships home or no ships home. More often than not, if there's 2 ships or 3 ships, that person's online. Not every time, but I would rather grind through 4 ships at home, assuming that person's offline, because 80% of the time the people are offline if they've got all ships home and no shield. And I use lat for speed ups when cracking bases. I never did get a Sally, with Fed being my only enemy. Bortus is the ship I use, and so I do the 50 latinum for quick repair if I'm cracking solo, and I switch crew around based on what ship I'm attacking, but I've never had anything other than the Bortus that's good. So I'll even burn extra speed ups going through trying to crack through a Sally than bother trying to use anything else I've had. But yeah, I do use Latinum for cracking, and typically in my alliance, for the most part, we share about everything. If there's something I can get through easy and doesn't have a whole lot that's worthy of sharing, I'll go crack a base here and there and drain it myself. But if it has any kind of substantial resources to help others, pretty much as a whole, that's what we tend to do.
Definitely. Now, when it comes to personal approaches at higher levels, I know this is a little bit where Potato and Steph, you guys differ. Potato, you're at a higher level when it comes to rating now, where you're more or less not rating stations anymore. You're rating systems, and I know BigSteph is a little more selective on his targets. Now, Potato, do you want to talk about that dynamic that happen, or the change in game that happens at those high levels, where now you're not just focusing on individual stations, but you're now going to go through and more or less clear out a system?
Yeah, and that didn't, it probably started to change for me, like in that 35 plus range, more than anything. When I just started rethinking my approach to rating, and it was more about how many, do I want to hop all over the galaxy looking for bases to raid, hit one, wait 10 minutes, see if they're home, then go find another, and for me, what I found is if I just, park in, systems are kind of laid out in this hub and spoke setup, right? So when you look at Asha or Kepler, they're kind of central points with some systems around them. I found out if I move into one of those systems and then hit everything I could hit, right? No matter what level, if it didn't have a shield up, I just went and cracked the base. And then if they were home, fine, right? Some people were going to be online, some weren't, some were going to shield up or not. It didn't matter, because you could go, get 20 million or 30 million in resources out of one system, and then just keep moving and don't worry if people are online or not. And it was really about not saving relocation tokens, just getting the most use out of them. And it also helped when sharing with a team, because you could go hit, 5 or 6 or 10 bases in one system, and then the team could come in regardless of how many resources were there. Everybody could get stuff out of it, right? One envoy load or 2 envoy loads or a fortunate load or whatever they wanted. But it was also fun cracking the bases. It just was a different approach.
Steph,
to me.
I know you look for individuals. Now, do you do any of that potato tactics where you're go in and you clear out a full system, or are you just mainly going after single stations with strong res?
Well, I do that, and then I also look for systems with several bases with a decent level of resources in them. So relocation tokens are a bit of a pinch point for me, so I try to be very selective
So
on
what do
how
you
I
think?
use them. So
Sorry, Steph. So what do you
if
think
I move,
about people that hive though? Will you try to go into one of those hive planets where you know a lot of those players will be active?
oh yeah, that was the most fun. Crab and AZ can attest to that. When they were in SH, I would drop in the system and I'd hit everybody to wake them up like a hornet's nest, kicking a hornet's nest, and letting them all come out and try and defend while I try and raid several bases in that system. I think for the PvP, that part is the most enjoyable for me. Ship-to-ship combat along with raiding.
Yeah. So Potato, do you have any experiences with Steph dropping into hives? I know when you were a member of SH, you had a main hive system. Do you want to talk about the dynamic of having hive systems and having people come in and try to raid that hive all the time?
Oh yeah, we were definitely a target. And Steph would come in and a few others, and I think that's probably the first place I ever got raided, and the team came to my defense and did a really good job. That's when I realized how important being part of an alliance is and what it really brings to you for base defense. I guess I have mixed thoughts on a hive. It does, to Steph's point, it wakes everybody up, and now there's ships out there that you can do PvP battles and have a neighborhood brawl, and it's just great fun, right? It's just not back and forth, just drain a base. The PvP, it has an element of a lot of fun to the game. But at the same time, what I've seen recently is, and it might be because of my ships, there's a lot less people willing to defend. Like their team members. So you go in, you're sitting next to 5 other players from the same team, and you just drain this base, and nobody comes out, right? All they do is just all shield up, and that could be a factor because of some of the ships I have. But I got to tell you, I really respect the teams that here's my tier 7 jelly rolling around, and I'm draining bases that with faction miners that a Mayflower is going to bounce off of. But they show up anyway and defend. I love that. Those are great teams to see, and you know that they're going to show up at the top of kind of the alliance list as well.
So to pretty much piggyback off alliances, now, Wraith, in your server, I know you said at level 19 you would have a lot of your bigger members crack bases and you'd be able to join raids. Now, as you've progressed in game and you're now level 30, what's your thoughts on solo versus team raiding? And to ask about team raiding, when does it become acceptable for somebody else from your alliance to join that raid? Is it a matter of if you're raiding the station, they're automatically allowed to join, or do you open up that invite to the rest of your alliance within alliance chat?
Let me go back to a thing, but when you guys were talking to Potato about raiding, when I was level 19, I had the North Star, and it was for my range. No one could destroy my ship. So what I would look for in a system is something that was really tight. It only had like one spot like that you could get in that system, and I would raid that whole system out just like Potato would at level 19. I don't care if they had 1 million in reserves. I took every envoy I could take through the bases. I'd go through that whole system, and then I'd go to the next system. Your question was about sharing. I probably did 100 bases. Like our high is in Eisen, and all that little hub around Eisen. I would crack bases open, and then I'd post it on our alliance chat. Hey, free reserves, come get it. And I would just keep doing that. Sometimes I do that, usually like a Friday night or Saturday night when everyone's home. And I would just defend. If they had people come out and try to take their miners out, I would just sit there with my almost 300k North Star, and I would just take them out, and I would just let them do that. But from what I've seen, if you're going after like a single base or two, if you don't do it quickly, it just gives them so much more time to get in there and get online and shield up. But if you go quick about it, you can get get them to zero pretty quickly. But if you're waiting, and it kind of just ties you
Yeah,
up. It seems
definitely.
to me.
Now, CRABULON, you're in CAZ, C-A-Z-Z, but you have your sister alliance, CAZ, just C-A-Z. Do you guys ever run into issues with sharing raids with the other alliance, or are you more or less the same alliance at that point? And how are you able to communicate with your alliance that, hey, there's a big station open? Are you doing it through Discord, or are you messaging a single person, hoping they're on, and sharing it with the rest of the alliance?
For the most part, we do our raids just out of convenience, sharing them within alliance chat. If there's help to be needed, it does happen quite often where we'll go to Discord and say, hey, we have this going on, come join in. And especially with defending, that works out great because the CAS with the single Z tends to have the bigger players, and often we need to lean on them for defense and support, and also helping crack bigger ones. But I think for the most part, that the two alliances, we will share on alliance chat and raid individually as alliances. And if there's something really major getting cracked, then both groups will join in. There'll be time to get on Discord and get others involved.
I think the math of raiding sometimes when sharing stations with other people could get a little tough. Potato, with your faction miners, you can get 2 million per shot. Now, do you run into any issues when, I know right now you are in a solo alliance, but do you run into any issues where you have, say, a lower member of your alliance come in and start hitting with either their Kumar or an envoy? And you want to just talk about like the math of how much time it adds to an actual draining of a station?
Yeah, so I guess I would start with, to me, it's always been about, if you get a base cracked, go drain the thing, right? I mean, that's just kind of my style, right? I'm going to take everything that's there. And speed is of the essence, because somebody's going to come online, their alliance is going to notify them, defenders are going to show up, right? All those different things are going to interrupt, what you're trying to accomplish. So for me, it's generally been all about speed. But there are times when you're cracking a base specifically to help the team you're on get the resources they need to continue progressing through the game. So you got to kind of know what it is you're doing when you go into it and how fast you can drain. But the math, so if I look at a faction miner, like a maxed out faction miner with Stawn on board, it'll do 3.2 million per scoop. And then you add two more that are doing over 2 million a scoop. You can drain a base what feels like really fast. But you just got to think about, you're going to hit, you can hit a base about 10 to 12 times per minute just because of the time it takes for the graphic to cycle through. 10 to 12 times a minute at 3 million a scoop or 2 million a scoop. Think about that as like 25 million per minute is kind of your high end of how fast you can drain a base. So somebody who's got 20 million, and that's a minute or less to drain them. On the other hand, when you look at 1 billion resources, and that's what everybody looks for, right? When you say, hey, anybody have a base they need cracked, they always throw you the ones over 1 billion. Well, even with maxed out faction miners, that's an hour per billion, right? Maybe slightly less if you don't lose anything on timing or if people are well coordinated, but it's 1 billion per hour. And I know I've seen the ones out there that this guy's got 10 billion. We really need to crack it and drain that guy. Okay, we're talking about 10 hours of draining, of raiding to actually drain that base. And the chances of doing that and not have them come online are pretty low in reality. But kind of to your point, Johnny, if you're taking 3 million a scoop and somebody says, but I really want to get in there with my envoy, and they're doing 150,000 per scoop, it's 20 times slower, right? And so it's really important that the alliance or whatever group is raiding together kind of decide up front, are they trying to drain the thing, or are they just trying to help their alliance get more resources? And you got to know up front, because, you know, if somebody shows up with an envoy or a Kamari or something, hey, they're just getting some resources, and if that was the intent, that's okay. You show up uninvited with one of those, you're just hurting the rest of the team, right? Get the resources out of that base. And I think Crab and I are completely different on this. I don't know, Crab, you probably have a different opinion about it.
Yes, if something was shared to the alliance, that's for everybody, and you know, it's for me and most of us, it's always about helping the conglomerate and helping the lower level people get what they need. If it slows down the draining process, so be it. I personally don't like to see, you know, 3 envoys back to back to back, but if you just bring what you can. I don't care for a battleship jumping in, but whatever survey you can, and jump in when you can, to help the little guy. For me, it's never been about draining as fast as possible. It's about the benefit of the
BigSteph,
group.
you know, when we talk about draining as fast as possible, I know you do a lot of team raiding. So when it comes to coordination with your alliance, do you want to just talk about what's the when your ship is, or somebody else's ship is in battle with that station? When is the ideal moment when those graphics are happening to click on that ship and hitting attack where you're absolutely to the maximum, draining as fast as you can?
Well, you give it a quick 3 count, and then you send your ship,
Now,
and usually you'll
do you
attack
watch
as
the
soon as they
graphic
finish.
itself, or are you just doing a mental
really
countdown every time?
I do a mental countdown every time.
So,
it seems to be the most efficient way. As they're parking, you're attacking.
yeah, and
so
I know with ships getting
fast as
stuck
you
in battle and
possibly
stuff,
do.
that could be tricky at times. You know, you're constantly, you know, restart your game and whatnot. But what's the most you can get in about 10 minutes? Are your faction miners around the same level as potatoes?
I have one that's in a similar ballpark, but no, not all of mine are that big. I think one of my smaller ones is like 1.2 million, and you know, my bigger one is
Sure. So when you are
million,
looking for a station to crack, Steph, I know you have a lot of maxed out officers, and I think you could really explain to a lot of the people out there listening to this podcast the value in good officers. But what is your main base cracking crew you like to run?
Well, it's usually Khan, Katie, and Jackham. The augment crew, they work really well. Now, if there's ships home, they don't work quite as well. Sometimes you want to be way more specific to strip the ships off, but for an empty base, I can one-shot up to 20 million base with my 2.7
Do you find more
million
benefit
auger,
with those
so
officers
that
on your jelly, or do you find more benefit of those officers on your auger?
For raiding, the auger is a much tougher ship for cracking bases than the jelly is. My jelly is almost 1 million more power. And
now, what about you, Potato? I know you run a jelly, but you also have it. How do those compare when it comes to base cracking? I know it might be a little bit tougher for you to answer this question because your jelly is so much more powerful than your Enterprise. But what have you found as the best base cracker?
Well, the jelly's just so much stronger in my case. It's better because, you know, there's a lot of bases that you could one-shot that people feel like they don't have to even shield, that their base is strong enough that the jelly can get through. But both of those are explorers. So when it comes to the ships that happen to be in port, they're pretty much equal. And I could mess around with the crews probably a little more on it, but I have a lot of officers that are kind of at that max level, that I tend to, you know, I don't go knock on bases. like I don't knock on the door with a Rialto or a Fortunate or some small ship just to see if they're home. I tend to go with drive a truck through the front door and then find out if they're home or not. Has been my approach. And I know a lot of people think about that differently, right? Tap with something small that's cheap to repair, and I really tend to just kick the front door in, and then
yeah, sure, and definitely
they'll come
now
running
with
outside
the
if they're
topic
home.
of knocking on station.
It looks like it's a great time for us to take a quick pause here. Trumworf from Trum's Klingon Taco Palace just showed up with lunch for all of us, and we're really glad to have him here as our sponsor. So welcome, Trum.
Gentlemen, thank you. Glad to be here. Lunch is served. Here you go, BigSteph. A nice big boar burrito with extra targ and fiber. Optics. Sorry, Steph, I got a PM from your wife this morning saying that your 4G gas was a little ripe lately, so I'm just trying to help you, bro. Krabby Ken's. Here's our famous menu item number 3. 3 triple tacos with the Elvis Presley hairdo and a heaping side of corn beans and rice. Now remember, Crab, the triple does provide you with a nice natural flossing for your teeth, so you should be shiny white. Johnny. Is that you, Johnny? Here you go. Targ fajitas, extra rare and bloody, just the way. Hold on a second. Freaking Targ jumped off the plate. Just a minute. Crap. Okay, hold on. There you go. Got it. Just a second. A little blood wine margarita. Anyways, don't worry, it won't be going anywhere now. It's just the way you like it, Johnny. Stationary and defenseless. Kapla. Now, AZ, rumor has it that you've been a little cranky lately, brother. So Dr. McCoy recommended some Pepto-Bismol and a shot of Jock Daniels. I also threw in a nice Tres Leches cake because I know you have a sweet tooth and it's succulently delicious. Now, for our honored guest from another server, here you go, Wraith. For you, I have a cookie. It's not just any cookie, Wraith, but a cookie by Anna. Why a cookie, you might ask? Well, it's simple. You're filthy, stinking rich, and you didn't even tip our waitresses. Welcome to serving 22, big boy. Just kidding. Here's a chainsaw salad with a nice blood wine vinaigrette. I just can't be mean to people. Anyways, now for all my friends on server 22, an important message from your friend Trumworf. Are you down? Did someone come into your sector and wipe out all your miners? Did someone kill your warship while it was just floating there? Did someone hit you so hard it made your daddy's nose bleed? Well, look, did someone hit your unshielded base, take all your resources, a ship so big, so ominous, so squid-like that it looks like it belonged on an episode of Babylon 5 and not Star Trek? Well, listen, I got to tell you something. Don't get mad. Get tacos. Remember, it's a game, and please, for Christ's sake, stop using your mama's credit card. If someone hits your miners, buy them a taco. If someone hits your base, chalk it up to shield management and buy them a taco. If someone sends you some PM smack, challenge them to a game of darts at Trumworf's Cantina, then hit them between the eyes with a dart. Oops. Look, it's like I've always said, don't worry, be happy. Now, our staff at Trumworf's can't wait to meet you. Our head chef, Obi-Wan Gonzalez, still stands ready to cook you some of the best Klingon cuisine south in the neutral zone. Mama Sophia's original recipes, God rest her soul. Sadly, Mama Sophia was killed during an NGNS raid a few weeks ago. Thanks, NGNS. Nevertheless, our head Orion waitress, Lupita, and my wife and all the wait staff still stand ready to be of service. But please, guys, please, no touchy, no feely. They are a bit feisty and won't hesitate to knock a tooth out of your head. Not sure if you noticed the 5-gallon jalapeno jar full of teeth on the bar. But if you look over there, you'll see Geek Strata, and he has no teeth. So get the hint. And don't forget that every Saturday night is heavy metal rock and roll night at Trumworf's Klingon Taco Palace. We are proud to have many bands like Galron Park, Brutalica, Shuknaya Katane, Thorn, or as some call it, Stovocorn, Multi-Death, Bloodvein, Van Hacken, Motley Cruel, Marooned Again, and the hottest band in the land, Piss! Well, anyways, tickets on sale at a taco truck nearest you. You know, the one that looks oddly like my miner? But please, guys, don't attack them. I will not be held responsible for scattered taco shells clogging your nacelles. So, in closing, let your anger go, let your hunger prevail, and remember, all are welcome at Trumworf's Klingon Taco Palace. My name is Trumworf, and I approve of this message. Kapla.
Trum, it is absolutely fantastic to have you in the studio, and this is absolutely delicious. We always appreciate what you bring to the table. Thank you, sir.
I think that brings us into people playing possum. I know with the most recent update, you can now scan a station after you knocked it, where you used to not be able to scan. So as soon as that shield would go up, you couldn't see what was going on with the ships. You couldn't see if people were changing crews or whatnot. Now, probably in Potato's case, you don't have a lot of people playing possum, but at the lower levels now for CRABULON and Wraith, I'll direct this to Wraith. Wraith, have you ran into the experience of a lot of people playing possum on you, or in turn, do you do the same thing when somebody tries to crack your station?
Yeah, I tend to, when they try to crack my station, I don't like my ships blowing up, so I just shield up. I don't generally play with that too much. Seems like every day I have people playing possum, but it's pretty evident. You can see the crew changed, or you can see the base gets healed. I don't know. They don't shield up, I'm like, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to hit it again. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to destroy my ship again.
On server 34, do you guys have any players that are pretty notorious for playing possum? Maybe even within your own alliance?
Yes. Any of the high ups on my alliance would do that. Like our Crash'em, he'll do that, and he'll be like, "Hey, watch this, guys." Dogs, he'll do the same thing. One of our top two guys. But yeah, and they'll share it with us with the location. Yeah. Say, hey, watch this guy.
Yeah. So CRABULON, as alliance leader of Kaz, do you get a lot of those people sending into alliance chat saying, "Hey, watch this as I play possum"?
No, actually. Maybe once or twice early on when that was a thing we realized we could do. Honestly, I don't see the playing possum as much anymore as it did when everything changed on base rating. I think it was more fun to do, and from some people's perspectives. I know it irritates a lot of people. I just always assume that's their prerogative and the risk you take by trying to crack a base. I've found personally, I always personally for if somebody's tapping on my base, I always just send a message saying, "Hey, I'm home," or "Good try," and most of the time, GHLC is really cool about that. A lot of times those guys aren't shielded, but they're almost always home, and they'll send funny messages. It cracks me up. Like, there's you should have brought flowers or cookies, or you should have stayed a while. We could have had a beer. I appreciate the messages, so we're not all wasting each other's time. But if somebody wants to play possum, yeah, I understand that that's their prerogative.
In that very, very strange category where people don't care if I'm online or not when they're trying to crack my station, which a lot of people out there in the galaxy listening to this is, what do you mean people try to hit your station when you're online? Yes, people try to hit my station all the time when I'm online, and I won't shield because station defense is so easy right now at this point, and it's fun because I will never be able, at my level, which is 34, I have a D4, which is about 1.3 million power. There's no way I can go and kill BigSteph's jelly. I just can't do it in the normal galaxy. But when I have all my ships home and my station fully repaired, I will be able to defeat BigSteph's jelly. So for me, I've always really enjoyed possum or just actively being online and repairing. Now, at a super high level, though, Potato, what would it take for somebody to crack your base? And at a high level, have you ever played possum against one of these big players we have on our server who possibly has a strong jelly?
Oh yeah, all the time. So, and I don't want to say all the time. My base gets hit, I don't know, 10 or 15 times a day probably. And it's always somebody with a Rialta or Fortunate that comes and hits me for whatever reason, right? Like you're 12 years old and somebody's daring you to run through the cemetery at night. But they do, and that's fine, right? It's not like it does any damage, and it didn't cost them anything to do it. But when there's a serious effort to crack my base, and it's happened, and I would just say there is no base that is uncrackable, and shields matter. So even with the power of the base I have, and I don't know, it's probably with no ships home, it's 85 million power, somewhere in that neighborhood. Somebody's going to make an investment to get through it. And I'm usually online if I'm not shielded. And I'll sit and watch, right, without repairing. And it's not so much playing possum, but I want to know what it takes to get through my base. And I did that. Actually, Logris, not too long ago, came and cracked my base with his jelly. And I think it took him 74, 75 hits to finally get through the base defenses with no ships home. So I've got a little bit of time, luckily. On the other hand, he wasn't upset by it. I mean, clearly it was an investment for him to keep repairing his jelly. But at the end of it, we had a good PM chat about here's what it took to get through, here's what his jelly could do, here's what crew he was using. And it gave him a reference point for his own base and what it would take for somebody to get through that.
Podcast, we had a level 49 on here. And anybody who didn't have a chance to listen to that podcast, if you're looking for a little bit of information on dark space or resource requirements at high levels, I definitely suggest going back and listening to episode 2. He's Inchote from server 34. Now, one thing he said during the podcast was at higher levels, you run into players that are just better at shield management. He mentioned the fact that he usually won't have his shield not up for longer than 5 minutes after it goes down. Now, Steph, we do have one player on our server who is sadly in my alliance, who is a very high power player on our server. I believe he's top 5 in power, and he's constantly getting raided. Now, you've been part of those raids. Terrain Diablo, that's the player's name on server 22. Do you want to talk about what it takes to crack his base?
Oh, that's a P1 and myself special. Yeah, we both 1-2 punch him and basically do weekly withdrawals from him. He's terrible at shields, that's for sure. But yeah, he's a much higher level than we are. A couple of levels above us, or 1 anyway, at the moment. But he was 3-4 before.
Yeah, but can you talk about how many ships does it take to crack his base? Because now, for those out there listening who don't know who Player 1 is, he's one of the top power players on our server, and he's currently number 1 in resources rated on our server. But what kind of investment does it cost on your side to actually crack one of those real big stations like his?
Probably 50 million trillium. We bounce maybe 25, 30 ships each off of him before we get in if he has no ships home. If he has ships home, then we're talking 40, 45
Now,
ships.
are you burning through LAT to get through this station, or are you normally just using speed up or a combination of both?
I normally use exclusively speed ups, dual fraction grind, so I have plenty. So
now,
Latinum is a bit of a sticking point for me at
this
times.
If Diablo is out there listening to this podcast, I wish I could teach him how to play possum, because, man, he would no longer be getting raided all the time. Because if somebody out there was looking at his station and saying just what you said, that it's going to take 25 to 40 jelly shots to crack his base, I'm not going to take that investment if I know he's constantly playing possum. Sadly, that's not the fact, but I wish I could teach him to. So for Potato, have you ran into any of those real big stations
That's
you had the
why
crab?
he doesn't fuck with me.
Oh yeah, and there's several out there, and I think I probably hit at some point, at one point or another, pretty much everybody who's 35 or above, right? I've tried their base for sure, and some of them are. I mean, you get into on our server, PJ or Satan Smurf or Logris or Terran Diablo, but those guys, I mean, they have bases that I really look at and think, okay, it's going to take me 30 minutes or an hour to crack this thing if they're not on. And then it's going to take me hours and hours and hours to drain them or get as much as I can out of them. And that's where sharing it, when you look at not just sharing with your alliance, but you invite other players into that have ships to help, right? So you look at BigSteph, or you look at P1, Philip the First. I don't have any issue inviting those guys into the raid because they're really good at they're experienced enough, and they're really good at coordinating the timing. When you have 2 or 3 or 4 maybe players that are high level draining a base, you don't have to worry about stepping on each other's toes. It just goes smoothly, one after another. And if somebody gets locked in battle, they don't even skip a beat, and it just keeps going, and somebody joins back in. That's really helpful. It's when you get somebody in that they're running back and forth and they don't get the kind of rhythm of it, that it breaks down and it becomes work more than fun. Did that make sense?
To me, it did.
Okay. Yeah, I love raiding with BigSteph because we can just back and forth, one after another, hitting a base, and I don't have to worry about what's he going to do next, right? Or what's his timing going to be, and that helps me when I'm raiding because I need the resources to level up, and I think I don't get in his way either, and it just kind of helps. It's good to have experienced players raiding with you. On the other hand, it's important to raid bases with less experienced players so they get it. All right, looks like we might have lost Johnny Chainsaw there, and hopefully he'll be able to join back in. So we'll kind of just keep going on the topics here.
That's Crab. Let me chime in on that. I absolutely love when a raid is coordinated. It's usually with people well, and the count and the timing. Either you're watching or you're just doing that mental count, like Steph said. I have found that once it gets to enough people there and free for all mode, I've learned there's no point trying to get it back to the timing, and then just try to have fun with the free for all thing. It's the free for all method is frustrating, especially with multiple alliances joining in, because you end up killing each other, and even if you're not trying to, and especially with the glitchiness of the game lately, and you're stuck in battle, that often ruins my timing. Is everything will be going smoothly, and then all of a sudden I'm stuck circling the base, or my ship won't all the way recall. But yeah, timing is awesome, and then once it's free for all, I try to just have fun with it instead of getting frustrated with it.
I'm sorry, killing raids a little bit. So, me personally, I would say almost half to a little bit over half of all my resources raided are from stolen raids. Now, BigSteph, I know I've come in and I've joined some of your alliance's raids. What's the dynamic that creates within alliances? Does it just drive you absolutely nuts, or does it more or less not bother you?
For me, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. But for the team, they can get pretty excited, especially when it's you.
Yeah,
Other
is there
people
any
not as
raid
much
that
so,
kind of
but
sticks
for
out in
whatever
your
reason,
mind
caught
of one
lots
that I
of
continuously kept joining that I was not invited to?
I don't see.
Yeah, I know you had one of your members retire, so you were trying to do more or less a farewell send-off. In our lines, we call it a pirate's funeral, where you know they drop tags and they let you guys raid their base, and I kept tracking you guys around lower level systems that raid to join, and I know I didn't make a lot of people happy on that one.
No, of course not. Especially in that situation.
Yeah.
That seems more personable,
I
think,
just
and
because
maybe hits people a little harder.
I knew it was gonna,
But
cause a controversy. And I think you've listened to enough of our. I'm looking for that content I create for myself, and that definitely didn't help my reputation. But now, CRABULON, have you ran into anybody stealing your raids?
Yeah, it happens from time to time. By the way, it would be helpful if you created some content with yourself by trying to improve your image instead of make it even worse. But anyway, we've had people jump in raids before, and it's frustrating. You tend fighting them, you lose track of your actual draining process you were doing. For me and probably most of us in either of our alliances, if someone from any other alliance just messages and says, "Hey, can I come get a scoop or two?" or "Hey, can I join in and help you drain?" There's not many people or groups out there that we would say no if they did ask. That being said, I always respect if somebody else, some other alliance is draining, I don't want to jump in. It's not my place. So it's more out of somebody being in need and that you have a relationship with than just like asking a stranger if you can jump in. And yeah, jumping in to steal a raid, it's definitely frustrating, and I would rather fight that person than even worry about draining the base any longer.
Your server when it comes to stealing raids, because I know on your server you do have one very large alliance now who has a lot of real strong players. Have you ran into stealing raids, and how is that looked upon on your server, which is server 34?
Yeah, the alliance you're talking about, Sonona. Generally, they're pretty nice to us. Haven't ran into many problems, thankfully, because they have so many big ships there. Recently, when I've only been level 30 for like 5 weeks. I went from level 20 to 30 in a few hours. So, like my faction miners are pretty small, 700K, and then the one cavort I have it's almost 1 million, but they're still babies. I had STFC steal a raid. I was warp raid, and I had my base in Morska, and I didn't want to leave it to go defend my raid. I was just I was warp raiding, and they had 3 bases come in and steal it. I was kind of mad, but that's the one that sticks out in my head that they stole. But I'll eventually get them back. Usually, when I was level 19, I had a couple people do that. Now all I do was I'd bookmark their base, and later on in life, I'd
now
get my resources back usually.
Yeah. So now,
But,
Potato, I got a question about base steal or raid steal, and now I know you've run into the issue where it's a different type of station stealing, where that alliance has a member with tons of resources, and then they boot and loot him because they can't stop you. Now, have you ever ran into that where somebody booted and looted one of their own alliance members? And do you think that's a very frowned upon game approach?
No, yes, I've run into it, right, where I'm raiding a base and then they decide they can't defend and they boot the guy so they can steal all the resources to keep them away from me and keep them within their alliance. And I personally have never just liked that as a strategy. But at the same time, I completely understand why an alliance would do that and try and grab the stuff for their own alliance member. And then a lot of them will, anything they get from the guy they booted, they donate to the alliance and help progress the alliance. And that's all perfectly good. Those I don't mind, right? And then you're in there and you get to do some PvP and it's all about defense and you just have some fun. It's the ones where you're raiding, and then a whole bunch of other people want to come and just steal the raid. Because I don't go jump on other people's raids. I figure, that team cracked it. They made the investment. Let them take it. I don't mind watching it. At least up to this point, I'm just not a fan of raid jumping.
And the love letters you get. Yeah. So
yeah, it just hasn't been my thing so far.
Different defending strategies. Now, Steph, I know I've ran into issues where you came and you've defended some people's stations. Now, your ship, a lot of times you'll keep it in the middle of, call it the battle triangle area. What's your best way to defend for one of your alliance members?
Well, we fall in that category. We have a lot of players that it's their choice. If you want to be booted and looted, we give them 5 to 10 minutes of defense, and if most of them want to be booted and looted, if that doesn't hold, then we boot them and boot them. So, I'll put myself in that triangle, and I'll get whoever I can. I prefer the ship-to-ship combat, so a lot of times I'll come in a little late when the ships are gathered, and I'll just clear the system out.
For when it comes to base defense, for me, what I'll do is I'll keep all my ships within my station, and I'm just going to target the miners, whether they're going to the station or they're leaving, because my station is strong with all ships home, and my ships are pretty weak when they're outside of my station, so it would be too easy to clean out my ships when people were defended. But I found that frustrates the drainers a lot, so that's what I'll try to do.
So Johnny, from my perspective, when somebody shows up and they're going to defend, the key for me with my miners is all I care about is as long as I can get to the base and hit it. I really don't care if you hit me on the way back, because you're really not going to take anything from me. No. So remember, you get all of it. So if you hit me with your D4, and I have a miner returning to my base with a full load, the only thing you get is what your D4 can hold. I get all the rest. So if you can hold 60,000 or 90,000, but I picked up 3.2 million, all I lost was 90,000. It's immaterial to me. I'll just keep going. I'll repair that thing and just keep rolling. I'm still going to drain. The key is, if you really want to interrupt somebody's hitting, is you don't want to hit them. You don't want to hit their miners after they've hit the base and gotten the full cargo load. You got to hit them before they get there, right? Because then you're costing them money or resources. You're costing them resources without any gain. But man, you hit my Antares after I've already got a $3.2 million scoop. I don't care. So it's immaterial to me at that point. You can hit it as many times as you want.
This is what I suggest to a lot of people out there listening is, on different servers, you come to know certain players, and I will look for the ship of whatever player complains the most. So whoever that player is, I will just target their miners. And I know it drives them crazy. And so what I have to do a lot of times for my alliance is, when my gamer tag shows up to, a station defense or a stolen raid or a raid just in general, people more or less get blinded by my gamer tag, and they stop seeing all other ships and everything else that's going on. Now, Steph, have you found that to be true within your alliance?
Oh yeah, there's certainly certain players on my team that is definitely the case. For the most part, as a whole, we probably got 65 of them that really could care less. But there is that handful.
All right.
That
I think this has been a
definitely
pretty
will go
good
after you
chat,
exclusively.
especially on the different aspects of Raiden. Potato, do you have any closing comments? And what do you think players should take out of this conversation from both a low level to a high level?
So for me, rating's a really important part of the game, right? And for lots and lots of different reasons, and being fun is one of them. And I think what I would hope people get out of it is rating is possible at all levels, right? From 15 through 50. It's a matter of go do it, go try it yourself, get good at it. There's a big difference between rating and being a participant in draining. And if you really go raid bases, crack them and drain them and share with others, you'll get a lot out of the game. And I'd recommend give it a shot, get good at it. That's why you build ships. I guess that's what I hope people get.
Yeah, BigSteph, I just
right? There's a lot of dynamics here that are worthwhile.
Time out of your day and more or less giving a voice behind the name on server 22 of you. But do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh yeah, rating benefits the whole alliance, yourself, whether it's solo or you share. I mean, you could solo raid all the time. Scopely makes it so you have to raid to progress. I mean,
CRABULON, I know you're one of the
more
well-respected and friendly players on the server. You know, how has your experience been with Raiden, and do you have any closing thoughts?
I think the most important thing for an up-and-coming player that really enjoys the game is to get in the most active cooperative alliance that you can. And even if you love that alliance, if it's not helping you in terms of raids or alliance awards, keep working your way up. Don't feel ashamed to ask an alliance that might be a little out of your league to join. That way people get to know you. The most important thing to me in growing in this game is an active
Wraith,
cooperative alliance.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing all your experience, especially when you were a level 19 getting over 1 billion in resources rated. I think we could all say wow to that. Do you have any closing thoughts and any advice last minute advice you could give to anybody about Raiden?
No, I was just about the same as CRABULON said. If you enter the game, you definitely want to find. If it wasn't for the alliance I joined, I probably would have quit long ago. It wouldn't have been much fun. But I learned a lot from my alliance, and the rating that's the only thing I look forward to. Really, I mean, I don't look forward to mining some nodes. But yeah, it's a lot of fun if you get it. I got to get on the right alliance.
Awesome, guys. Well, this is gonna wrap up episode 4, and this is our first roundtable discussion. And we hope to have all of you guys on and again in the future. This could potentially only be part 1 of a part 2 series for resources rating, because there's still a lot of topics we didn't have time to touch base on. But yeah, Potato, if you just want to sign us off.
Yeah, really appreciate everybody being here. And the one thing I'll say about rating, it's a lot of fun. It's really impactful in the game. And if you don't want to get rated, shield up, because they matter. And with that,
safe, guys.
Let's wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Greatly appreciate your time.
See you, fellas.